Alright, this is my first educational video. I'm building an i9 Intel-based desktop PC. Sped up a lot of the video, cut out a lot of wasted time. Right now I'm just prepping the box, getting it ready for the motherboard, pulling out the extra riser plate right now. Now I bought a pretty big box. I learned my lesson from buying a smaller box in my old build. As you can see here, that box was a nightmare to work in. I got huge hands, doesn't work well in tight areas, and it was killing me every bit of the way. So I bought me I believe this is extended ATX because you can fit the whole motherboard, and it's got a little spot here for the power supply that goes below everything else, separate chamber, keep everything just a little bit more separated than my last box, and give my hands a break because I've got a little bit of nerve damage as well I'm dealing with in one of my hands, and kind of makes things hard when you ain't got much space to work with. So here I am just popping in the power supply, and that's pretty easy, just 4 screws on the back end if I wasn't dropping screws all over my hand. And getting the last couple screws in now. It's a pain. I should have had the camera in a better spot here, but I was trying to give the best look inside the box. But the holes are easy to find, and there's only one way those power supplies go in. 4 screws through the 4 holes in the bottom, and you're pretty well good to go. So right now I'm popping off the plate that holds the slot for my M2 drive. I'm going to put my operating system on that M2 drive just to increase the speed instead of just using regular SSDs. M2 seems to give me a little bit more performance, and that's why I chose to do that. Now there is 2 slots for M2s on this board. You can see the 3 circular dots just north of the first GPU and between the CPU and the GPU. And that slot right there I'm leaving open, even though it's easier to get to, and it is the #1 slot in this board. I'm leaving it open just in case I buy another one. I won't have to pull off a GPU and this plate just to get down and put another one in. I'll be able to just maybe even just slide it around the GPU and pop it in there, make it easier on myself. So I'm just tightening that screw down, easy in the slot, 1 screw, done. And now I just put the safety plate back over the drive just in case I drop something, but I don't plan on dropping anything heavy on this motherboard anytime soon, as you could imagine. There we go, nice and tight. Good to go. Now I'm pulling the arm off of the plastic cover of the CPU socket so I can get that hunk of junk off of there. You want to be careful, you don't want to go slamming stuff around that socket area. There's the old i9, or new, I should say. All right, so lifting up the tray. Everybody gets stressed out over CPU stuff, and it's literally one of the easiest things to do on the entire build. You really just look at the arrow that's on your CPU. It's on probably the lower left-hand corner, because that's where it usually is on mine, and it matches up to the socket that you have right in the corner. You'll see it. I'm pulling the board closer to myself now to give myself a better look. at it as well, just to make sure I didn't have any surprises. You never know with, a new CPU what could change over time. So I gave it a little scope out before I popped this sucker on. But I didn't have any issues with it, and I don't foresee you will either once you get going on this thing. One thing you want to do is you don't want to put any extra downward force on this thing once you put it over the socket. You want to let the bracket do that because you don't want to go pushing down and bending pins or doing anything stupid. Trying not to touch the plate like I am, because you can leave dead cells, you name it, oil off your skin. Anything can screw a CPU up. So actually, after I did this, I actually gave the top of that CPU a good wipe down to make sure that I wasn't leaving anything on there that could adversely affect my performance. And here I am just popping the old Mobo in the spot, which you guys got to miss the awesome action of me swinging the hammer on the box. Says it was compatible, and it was for 8 out of 9 screws. And the fifth one came after a hammer swing. You didn't see that, but I actually had to pull that board out because the holes didn't line up in that back front or back left corner, I should say, upper left corner in your picture here. And I had to give that one shot with a hammer, and I didn't dent anything, but I popped a little bit of aluminum, just that eighth of an inch I needed, and all the holes lined up, and bam, good to go. So I'm just popping the screws in the holes after I wrestled that out. As you can see, there's 9 screws, 3 in the bottom, 3 through the middle, 3 through the top. And you want to use the flathead screws, not the bulky ones. You want to use the flat ones on the motherboard. The bulky ones are not meant for the board. You will find that out the hard way and crack your board, and you will have a nightmare scenario on your hands if your board wants to keep working, that is. But as you can see, I'm just flying right through this. I had to speed up the video because I was taking forever. And even with me moving at 2 or 3 times speed, it's still slow. But I'm getting the last couple screws in now. A little touch-up tightening, and I'm ready for my RAM. Which the RAM, you can put this on at any point in the build. It really doesn't matter. Like right before you turn it on if you want. It really doesn't matter. I was just doing this because I wanted to open the package already. I was tired of waiting. Now I'm pointing out the 1 and the 3 slot in this board because when you only put single channel RAM in a motherboard, you had better put it in slots 1 and 3 unless your manual tells you to do differently. Because if you do 1 and 2, it's not going to boot. And it's a simple and very easy mistake. I have plenty of friends who have made the mistake, veterans who've built many PCs as well, and it's an easy mistake. 1 and 2 does not work. 1 and 3 for single channel, and then you put 2 and 4 for your second set if you do have your second set. That is the CPU fan I bought. I bought a master cooler, liquid cooled CPU cooler. Cost me about 110 bucks. And it was my first foray into liquid cooling, and so far I am enjoying the results. You can't see what I'm doing right here because I'm not a cinematographer, but there's 8 screws, 4 for each fan. You can see the long screws through the plastic here sticking out, facing the motherboard, the heads of those things popping out. I'm just putting the bolts on the other end, or the screws on the other end, I should say, to the case so the fan stays at the top of the case, and you put those in from the outside in. This bracket is my CPU fan bracket slash CPU cooler, whatever you're using, fan, liquid cooled, whatever your flavor is. Now, mine came with these little plastic chips you'll see me putting on. They're just meant to hold the bracket in place over the bolt. And it's supposed to keep the bolt on there, I'm pretty sure, just to make sure it doesn't accidentally pop. It still can pop out real easily, but I guess it's supposed to protect the bolts. There, all four on. And now I'm on the opposite side putting the headers on. Four headers. Now this is specific to this type of cooler. I didn't have to do this on my old build. I had a simple cross bracket that went right over the CPU, and it was one piece, real easy to throw on with a thermal paste. This one right here had two side brackets that I had to screw on to the cooler. It's just so it meets up with those headers on the sides, and you have to be cautious as well because there's three different holes you'll see in these plates, and you need to put that cooler through the header portion meant for your CPU and your cooler. There, it will say it in your instruction manual. You had better put it through the right one, or you could crack something. God knows what you could do, but you'll see me in a second do it. Now see, there's me pointing them at 1, 2, and 3. Those are three separate holes, actually, not just one slot. That is power supply for CPU. There's a little 8-hole slot right at the corner of the board that I'm plugging it into. And I'm going to run that down through the back of the case. I didn't do it now, but I did wire it through the back of the case down through the power supply. So right here, this is simple. All I'm doing is providing power for the fans. There's a spot right next to the CPU specifically meant for the CPU fan. It will say CPU fan. If my head would get out of the way. And now this is the motherboard power supply right here. I've wired that from the power supply through the case, and I'm just going to slide that in right there. Here is the other end of that same cable going into the power supply. That is the other end of my CPU cable. All right, here comes everybody's favorite part, thermal paste. I admit the first time I did this on my first PC, I thought I was performing heart surgery, and it is not that complicated. Um, Now, before you call me a noob and start trolling me because I'm not doing the P drop method or I'm not doing your X Wing method or whatever the hell you're talking about, I want to advise you that I followed the instructions in the user manual for this thermal paste, which says a north-south line through the center of the die is the correct way to use this proper paste. So, proceed to troll at your own risk. Um, but as you can see, one straight line right down the center, almost perfect, but you know, nobody's perfect. What do you want? And here I go popping the liquid cooler on top of those headers I screwed on not too long ago. And I'm reaching around to find all of the dropped uh, screws that go on top of those headers that tighten everything down. And you'll see me bending the RAM left and right during this video because I just did not care. You got to be comfortable. I didn't put a lot of stress on them, but you do see them flex a little bit here as I'm moving stuff around, and they got a little give, but you don't want to put too much pressure on your RAM. And now this is for the USB header portion of my case. It's the most annoying part of any build because you got 500 little pins that got to go correctly in the right spot, or your lights don't work, or a USB port won't work, or something that you probably really want to work won't work. So spend the time in your user manual there and learn the proper way to do it, because on my second build is completely different than my first one that I did 4 years ago as well. So just make sure you're following that manual in this portion or you will run into trouble. All right. Powering up more devices, I see. There we go. So now the case has got power, and I'm starting to plug in things that are going to use that power. And yes, I have a DVD drive. I specifically bought a case with a slot available for it because I technically still need to be able to use them for my work. Simple, pops right in, one cord to the motherboard, one cord to the back of that CD drive, and I'm on to the GPUs, which I got two beefy 1080 Ti's here that I love. That snaps easily down right into place. You'll hear it click, but you want to put the left corner in first before you put the right when you put those GPUs down, because the lever is what's going to click. If you put the right in first and go put the left in, you could have bad problems. And that is my SLI bridge that NVIDIA overcharged me for. And there we go. We have ourselves a box that should turn on. Give it a little power. You see the motherboard light up. Fire up the power switch. Thought I didn't do something right. And bam. First try. Still got it. And that is how you build an Intel-based i9 PC. Feel free to ask questions. I will be happy to help you out in any builds that you're looking to make in the future. Thanks for watching.